Welcome to this presentation in which we're going to discuss how to take an examination in one of my online classes. Typically, I have two examinations, a midterm examination and a final examination. And you'll need to take both of those tests in a proctored environment. Let me first of all talk a little bit about why I require the tests be proctored. I guess the first thing is that college is a serious thing. It's an investment of your time and resources, and I respect that. And for me to treat a test as something not so important, something not worth getting worked up about, is really to diminish the importance of your education and your commitment. If a test is unproctored, if somebody is at home and they can do whatever they want to during the test, a fair percentage of students, and studies indicate it's probably about 80% of students, will cheat. They will look in their textbook, they will look in their notes, they will call up a friend, they will Google the information. Most people, unfortunately, will not honor the limitations of the test. And that means that those who are going to follow the rules are at a tremendous disadvantage in test taking. That isn't fair. It's not what I want to do for you as a student. I respect you and the work that you've invested in the course, and so I definitely want you to get full credit for all of that hard work, and that requires the test be proctored. Another reason that I have tests be proctored is that most of my tests, though they're very thorough, are not overly difficult. If you know the information, if you can repeat the definitions, if you can understand the various steps in a process, you're going to do very, very well on my tests. I don't have a lot in most of my classes, there's a few exceptions, but I don't have a lot of scenario-based questions. Those are difficult. The reason why many times instructors use those questions is that they want to get at college level sophisticated reasoning, which is awesome. But sometimes the reason that they do that is that they know students will be using their book. And so there's no point in me as an instructor asking you for the definition of, binomial, if I know you can just go to the index of the book and look it up. Oh, there's the definition of binomial, and you can, of course, pick from the multiple choice question. I can't ask that question, so I have to ask you a question that you can't easily Google or easily look up in the textbook. Well, those questions are, number one, a lot harder to write, and number two, a lot harder for you to answer, and they require a lot deeper knowledge. I want you to have that deeper knowledge, but I don't want my test to be insanely difficult. And so the fact that the tests are proctored allows me to ask questions that you could easily find in the textbook if you had access to it. So hopefully you're persuaded that a proctored test is in your best interest, but if you are not, that's kind of neither here nor there. That's the deal in my classes. You have to have the test proctored. Now I have other activities in the class that aren't proctored. In many classes I have quizzes, and those quizzes aren't necessarily proctored, but they're usually timed. And my goal there is to not give people enough time to actually, if they were inclined to, I know many people aren't inclined to, but those who are inclined to bend the rules won't have enough time to find all of those answers in the book. So in some sense, timing can be the equivalent of proctoring. Okay, so you have two choices for proctoring. One is you can go to a Collin Testing Center. We have a testing center on each one of the major campuses, and so that's a really good choice. There's going to be one that's probably convenient for you if you are in Collin County. Another choice, though, is ProctorU. Sometimes students are traveling on business, or maybe they live in a different part of the country, or maybe even in a different country. And so under those circumstances, it may not be practical to come to Collin and take the test at one of its testing centers. And so ProctorU is a good choice. Whichever place you take, you can take the test only once. Now, typically, you are technically going to be able to take it twice. You can take it on ProctorU and you can take it in the Collin Testing Center. But if you actually do that, I will be able to see that, and that will be something I have to report to the Dean of Students, because that is obviously a testing irregularity. It would certainly indicate academic dishonesty. So don't do that. You've got to pick one place or the other to take the test. So let's assume that you're like probably 99% of students, and you choose the Collin Testing Center. And of course, people choose the Collin Testing Center primarily for two reasons. Number one, it's convenient. It's a lot easier to maneuver. There's a lot fewer hoops you have to jump through to use the testing center versus ProctorU. Number one. And number two, it's free, or rather your tuition dollars are already paying for it. So free and convenient are pretty selling features for the testing center. Usually folks who choose ProctorU are folks who are living, in distant places where it would be expensive to get here, honestly. So let's assume you're taking the testing center. What is that going to look like? Well, you're going to have a range of dates to take the test. Usually I give 5 to 7. I will definitely give you at least a weekend. And sometimes during finals week, it might be as low as 4, but I try to give many, many days. You'll get an email about a week before the finals or the midterms or the finals are coming up that will give you the specifics. There's no need to email me. I won't have the dates worked out until I send out the email. I know you're interested, so just keep this in mind. If you have a question about the dates, it'll be 5 to 7 dates. You'll be able to see the week that the midterm is going to be available in the syllabus. So flip to that. You'll have virtually all the information you need at that point, and then just be on the lookout for the email or the announcement that I'll be sending out with the specifics. You'll have 5 to 7 dates, including the weekend. I suggest that you go early. Definitely don't wait for the last day. Midterm and final weeks are busy, busy times, and there's a set number of computers. The testing center can't manufacture new computers. And so if you show up there and all the computers are being used, guess what? You're out of luck, and you don't want to be in that situation on the last day. So plan to go early. I also plan to go early because, life happens. You get sick, you have that crisis at work, your car breaks down, lots of things that can happen that can affect your ability to perform on that last day. And keep in mind that while I do, in extreme circumstances, allow makeups or extensions for midterms or final examinations, you're going to have to explain to me how you couldn't have taken the test for the entire period of time. Most people can't do that. And so the fact that you have a really, really good reason why you couldn't be there that last day, my question is going to be, well, what about the day before that? Or what about the first day of the testing window? And so you'll need to have documentation to support the entire period. One of the reasons why I give so many days is so that there is no need for makeups. If you want to think about it, you can consider the first day of the window the test day, and all the other days after that the makeup days, if that helps you to think about it. So keep that in mind as you're scheduling. And of course, you're going to want to calendar these days in your calendar that you maintain as early as possible, so that as soon as you get the dates so that you can plan ahead. Before you go to the testing center, you're going to want to go on Canvas to make sure you can see the test. Let me show you what I mean by that. Let's go into a class. So here you can see the test here. I can click on it and I can read some information about the test. If you can't see it when you go to the folder, then there's nothing for you to take. It probably means I've gotten loopy here and forgotten to reveal it to students. That's especially important if you're taking it on the first day of the window, and sometimes even the second day of the window. So be sure to find it on Canvas before you go, because if you show up there and you can't see the test, there's nothing for you to take. If I'm not available and can't field the call right now, I can't turn it on. So be sure to look. I apologize if I were to leave it not open, but it's happened before. I'm not necessarily the person who remembers everything all the time. I apologize in advance. I don't want you to be inconvenienced in the way, so make sure you can see the test. Now, I drop off the test information to the Frisco Testing Center, which, by the way, is in Founders Hall on the Frisco campus, which is the Frisco campus is also called the Preston Ridge campus. If you are going to any other testing center, please call ahead. Let me explain why you should do that. When I drop off the test to the Frisco Testing Center, I check a little box on it saying, please make this test available to all other testing centers. And I think that they do that. But sometimes those forms get lost in the shuffle. They're filed or misfiled or something happens. And every now and again, a student will show up at the the Plano campus testing center or the McKinney campus testing center, and the people there will say, we don't have a record of this. So if you call ahead, what you can do is you can resolve that problem right away. So let's say they say that they don't have a copy of the test. What are you going to do? Well, if the one thing that works probably more than half of the time is say, well, my instructor told me that she checked that box, and so I think you have it. And oftentimes just saying it again will cause them to look a little bit more conscientiously, and then they'll find it. But let's say that really doesn't work. Well, then what you can do is you can say, well, could you call up the Frisco Center, because I know that the instructor checked that box, and they should be able to resend it to you. And so under those circumstances, you ask them to make that contact. I mean, my experience, especially when it's not too crowded, that the testing center will probably oblige the student in that way. And then they will contact the Frisco Testing Center and cause that form to be resubmitted. And then you'll be able to take the test. Again, this might take 30 minutes to get all this worked out. You don't want to be stuck waiting for the test under those circumstances. So you do this before you leave to take the test. But let's say that they're not willing to make the call, or whatever reason, that's just not going to happen. Okay, then you can call the Frisco Testing Center and say, hey, I know my instructor, Professor Groover, wanted this to be available. Can you resend it to the testing center? And usually, again, unless they're swamped, they're going to be willing to do that. Worst case scenario, if you try all of these approaches and you just can't persuade them to make the test available in the testing center you prefer, then you'll need to go to the Frisco Testing Center. It shouldn't come down to that, and that's, again, another reason why you don't want to wait to the last day, because if you show up, say 90 minutes before the center closes at the Plano campus, and you have to go to the Frisco campus, well, realistically, you're not going to be able to get there in enough time before that 1 hour envelope before the testing center closes to begin the test. So again, for all of these reasons, especially if you're taking the test anywhere other than the Frisco Testing Center, you definitely want to go before the last day. You'll want to check the testing center to make sure you know its hours. They're posted. Let me just show you how to go about doing that. I'll just go to collin.edu. And I'll type in testing center. And you can see they will give you the hours of operation, and they'll tell you about when the center might be closed. They'll also give you the telephone number and directions to the facilities. You can see that they have pretty open hours Monday through Thursday, but on Friday and Saturday they have restricted hours. They don't have any hours on Sunday. And they will not allow you to start a test during the last hour, even if it's a short quiz. They're just not going to let you do that. So these are some helpful hints. Keep in mind, these are the hours of the center today, but you're obviously going to want to check, because certainly the centers could change their hours that they are open in the future. You will also need to bring your student ID. They will not be willing to accept your driver's license or your passport or some other documentation and load the student ID. If you've mislaid your student ID or don't have one, you can get another one made, but the process of getting it may be such that the hours on the Frisco campus, it's, I think, in Alumni Hall. It's fairly close to the cafeteria in the Plano campus, but their hours may not be open when you're going to take the test, so be sure you have that student ID before the day that you're going to be taking the test. So that's how you handle the testing center. By the way, the test will be password protected, so it won't be possible for you to take the test anywhere other than a testing center where the personnel has access to the password. Obviously, I'm not going to be giving out the password except to the testing center personnel. But let's say for whatever reason you are interested in the ProctorU option, and it can be a great option for folks who are in that situation. The first thing that you need to do is make sure your computer is compatible with ProctorU. Let's go over here and just see how that process looks. I'm going to go back and type in ProctorU. sorry. There's a video that you can watch which will give you some information about it. And then there is maybe it's here. Here's the technical specifications page. Tells you what your computer needs to have affiliated with it. And there is, I'm not seeing it here right now. Maybe if I click here. No, that's not going to be it. Here. This is what you click on to check your computer out to make sure it has the things. Again, you're going to need a camera, you're going to need a microphone, you're going to need a flash. That you need to have various and sundry aspects to make sure that it's going to work. And so you have to make sure that your computer is compatible. You also need a reliable internet connection. I have had students who had a computer that was compatible, but because of where they lived or whatever, their internet connection was not highly reliable. And I've had people who've lost their connection in the middle of the test. Obviously, that's terrifying and problematic. And so if you happen to have any doubts about the reliability of your internet, you're going to want to make sure that you are in a place where you don't have those concerns, because you want full credit for your test. I want you to have full credit for your test. You don't have to worry about that in the Collin Testing Center, but if you're taking it somewhere else, the burden is on you to make sure you have that reliable internet connection. Sometimes people want to use ProctorU because they have young children and they want to avoid the cost of maybe hiring a caretaker. If your children are teenagers or maybe even 10-year-olds or something like that, you may be able to get away with just having them in another room. But if they're 3 and 4, unfortunately, you're going to need someone to watch them because they can't be in the room with you. They can't wander in. And I have older children now, but I can remember the days that, you know, when I had little ones and they aren't going to be able to just ignore mom or dad during the hour or more time that you need to take the test. So please plan on having childcare available if you have young children while you're taking the test. In addition, you're going to have to pay for ProctorU. This service is free, the Collin Testing Center, because your tuition dollars are paying for it. But ProctorU is going to cost you between $9 and $32 depending upon how long you take with the test. So it's not a trivial expense. You'll need to let me know about your preference to use ProctorU at least 10 days before the testing window opens. My suggestion is to go ahead and stop the video right now and send me a note if you're thinking that you're going to want to use ProctorU. There's no reason to delay. You're not making a firm commitment at this point. If you wait until there's fewer than 10 days before the window opens, you may lose your opportunity to use ProctorU and have to use the Collin Testing Center. I will have this 10-day rule so that you and I can go through all the steps we need to with you testing your equipment and me asking the questions that I need to do and me setting you up in the system. So it's a little bit of an involved process, but when you need it, it's a good process. And so I'm not trying to discourage you if it's something that you really need. I just want to let you know that it's not just kind of show up and take it type situation. When you get my email, again, it's probably going to be the same email or sent the same day as the email about the Collin Testing Center. Be sure to calendar those dates. There will be fewer dates for the ProctorU students than for the Collin Testing Center unit students. And the reason for that is that the window closes a day earlier. I have that policy because I've had students who tried to use ProctorU but decided that they couldn't, perhaps because of the expense or perhaps because of a technical problem. And so therefore they needed to go ahead and use the Collin Testing Center. Well, if they waited to the last day to use ProctorU and that last day was the same last day as the Collin Testing Center, they were out of luck. And so now I closed the ProctorU testing date one day earlier so that students will have that option of using the Collin Testing Center. I also closed the ProctorU Testing Center one day earlier because ProctorU does allow you to take tests there's more hour options, and Sunday is an option for ProctorU. So you get typically as many days of testing. It's just they're different days than you would if you're using the Collin Testing Center. Once you decide to use ProctorU, I've approved you, and I've sent around the note that about the days of availability. Now you're ready to schedule your test time with ProctorU. Please go ahead and schedule it that same day that you get the email, even if you're not going to take the test on that day. That way you're going to be sure that you're going to have a slot on the day that you want. Also plan to take the test early in the window. Again, definitely not that last day. There's too many variables in this. I don't want you to feel rushed or uncertain about how things are going to play out. Before, ideally at least a day before, you're going to want to be sure that you can see the test on Canvas. Now, if you're a ProctorU student, you're almost certainly going to see two tests, the Collin Testing Center test and the ProctorU test. You're obviously going to need to go into the ProctorU test to take the test through ProctorU. The passwords are different on the two tests, so you can't just click on either one and be able to successfully take the test. If you are taking the test through the Collin Testing Center, you may or may not see two tests depending upon how I scheduled it initially. The two tests have different passwords, so you can't just inadvertently take the wrong test. Again, technically, if you're a ProctorU student, you will see two tests, so you could take the test twice, but that would be a violation of the academic honesty policy. So once you begin your ProctorU test, you have closed the door on taking the Collin Testing Center. Once you start the test at a Collin Testing Center, you can't change your mind and use ProctorU. I hope that this information has been helpful. I thank you for your attention, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.